Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Happy Friday, folks. We are broadcasting live from Los Angeles as we kick off a fantastic show for you. We want to share with you the latest coming out of Washington, D.C. as President Biden and his administration have announced that they're opening or creating a federal office for gun violence prevention that is going to be headed up by Vice President Kamala Harris. We'll talk to you and share with you the latest from the White House. Also, let's talk about National Rail Safety Week and the fact that children are affected by train accidents more than any other demographic. We'll give you the latest on that. Later on, it is Hispanic Heritage Month, and we're celebrating Afro Latinos, and we want you to do the same. So, folks, we'll have those conversations and a whole lot more in today's edition of The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, happy Friday. Welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, I want you to know that we are streaming on so many different platforms today. Make sure y'all check us out on various platforms. First and foremost, our home platform of blackstarnetwork.com. Again, that's blackstarnetwork.com. You can find that platform online. You can download the app. You can follow us on social media. And of course, you can give to help power this digital media movement that we got started. So make sure you go to our website at blackstarnetwork.com. We're also streaming on Amazon News on your Fire TV and Plex TV 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so on both platforms. And of course, we're streaming on social media. Find us on Facebook and, of course, on YouTube. And that's where you find the fantastic, the infamous Culture Crew. That's where we have our chats, folks. So make sure you go under Roland Martin on YouTube, check in and be a part of the conversation because it is always live and lit, folks. And we want to just do a little something, giving a big shout out to all of those Culture Crew members that are checking in from around the country. I can't express thank you enough for always being there, being so supportive of what we do here on the Culture on the Black Star Network. So make sure y'all join us in the conversation there. All right, folks, let's jump right into it because I'm very excited. This is actually a phenomenal thing that we see coming out of the White House as President Biden. It was officially announced yesterday, but President Biden gave some remarks earlier today where he talks about how his administration, him and Vice President Kamala Harris, will be creating a federal office for gun violence prevention. Now, you're talking about something that has been a long time coming. This is one of those things, folks, simply because we know, we've talked about it here on this show. It's been talked about all across the country, the prevalence of gun violence in this country, and more importantly, the impact that it has made on families and communities across many generational lines. And so for President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris to create a space, an office, something, an institution that will start to not just look at this issue, but start to create provide resources and other things that can help curb this epidemic of gun violence is something that needs to be done. And I'm so happy the president and the vice president decided to move forward using their platforms, using the resources. And it's necessary. It is so necessary. But let me just share this very quickly. We got a quick excerpt, and Lisa, I know that I want to play just a little bit of what President Biden had to say at the White House earlier this afternoon. But let me just tell you, this gun violence situation is so deep, folks. It's actually one of the big factors of children's death in America. Well, I'm not going to say any much more about this. Let's hear from President Biden himself as he talks about creating this federal office for gun violence prevention. We're going to see if we're going to pull that up really, really quickly.
I thought I even remotely.
Here we go.
My whole career. Guns are the #1 killer of children in America. Guns are the #1 killer of children in America, the United States of America. More than car accidents, more than cancer, more than other diseases. In 2023 so far, our country has experienced more than 500 mass shootings and well over 30,000 deaths due to gun violence. It's totally unacceptable. It's not who we are. And we have to act. We have to act now. And let me be very clear. If members of the Congress refuse to act, then we'll need to elect new members of Congress that will act. Democrat or Republican. Look, folks, there comes a point where our voices are so loud, our determination is so clear that our effort can no longer be stopped. We're reaching that point. We've reached that point today, in my view, where the safety of our kids from gun violence is on the ballot. At the end of the day, whether the Democrats or Republicans, we all want our families to be safe. We all want to go to school, houses of worship, grocery stores, gyms, malls, movies, without constant anxiety. We all want our kids to have the freedom to learn how to read and write in school instead of duck and cover, for God's sake. And it matters. So let me close with this. Earlier this summer, I was in Connecticut at a summit on gun safety hosted by Senator Murphy. 4 students impacted by gun violence who are here with us today summoned extraordinary courage and stood and shared their stories on stage. 4 of them. They each came from different backgrounds, different parts of the country, different shootings, but they shared a common singular message that one of them summed up in just a few words, and I quote, "The deadly and traumatic price for inaction." That's what he talked about, the deadly and traumatic price for inaction. They made clear what all of you know too well. That price can no longer be the lives of our children and the people of our country. They spoke for an entire generation of Americans who will not be ignored, will not be shunned, and will not be silenced. And I know progress is hard. I've been at this a long time, but we've done it before. We can do it again. If we're here, I'm here to tell you, to you, and the Vice President Harris hears you as well. You're right. You're right. We're by your side, and we're never going to give up dealing with this problem. We're never going to forget your loved ones. We're never going to get there unless we remember. You know, I know we'll do this because I know you. Heroes. Heroes proving that even with heavy hearts, you have unbreakable spirits. In memory of your loved ones, you're building a movement that endures. Above all, you'll never give up on the one thing we must never lose: hope. 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 Jill and I, Kamala and Doug, our entire administration, are more determined than ever to carry forward that hope, that inspiration, that light that you continue to give us all. For the lives we have lost, well, for the lives we can save, we can do this. We just have to keep going. We just have to keep the faith. We just have to remember who we are. Every time I walk out of my grandpa's house up in Scranton, he'd yell, "For real. Joey, keep the faith." And my grandmother would go, "No, Joey, spread it. Spread it." That's what we have to do. Spread the faith. And remember, and I mean this sincerely, we are the United States of America. There is nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. Nothing we've ever tried to solve, when we've done it together, we haven't succeeded. God bless you all. May God protect our troops, and may God protect our children. Thank you so very much.
Distinguished guests, please.
Of course, that was President Biden right there at the White House. Standing next to him, of course, Vice President Kamala Harris, as they move forward in announcing this new initiative to create a federal office for gun violence prevention, the first of its kind, folks. Now, we can talk about a lot of things, but this right here, this hits home. This hits home, and this is so necessary and so important that we are seeing a situation like this even taking place, where the president has opened up an office, putting some money, putting some resources behind it. Again, Vice President Kamala Harris will be leading the way with the mission and vision for this new office. There are also going to be a few policy advisors, of course. But one of the things that, as you heard President Biden talks about, is that this is going to create a new standard of where we really are. The conversation about gun violence in this country, whether you're Democrat or Republican, if you think that this is a problem, then something is really, really wrong with you folks. I got the crew checking in all across the country. Deidre, Tiana, good afternoon. Hey, Tiana. Hey, Cindy. I see you. Thank you so much for checking in. T-Mac M223, you said Trump would have never created anything like this. No. He would not have done that, T-Mac. Thank you so much for checking in. Cindy D, you said it's much needed, but we need real legislation. Well, you got a whole office. We got a whole office. So if you're talking about a whole office, let me just break this down, give us even some more context for this. In terms of gun violence, we have a tracker. Police-involved shootings, there might be some trackers. Like, there aren't any real institutions, and I'm talking about institutions within our government where things like this are not just being tracked or monitored, but things like this is that's the sole mission. So when you're talking about gun violence, as crazy as we know it is, and look how long it has taken for us to even get to this. And to President Biden's credit, as he said that he's been doing this a long time, change takes very slow, can be very slow at times. And that's very true, especially when you're dealing with government. But the fact that you even have an office like this is something that is showing that, yep, we're making some progress down this road. So I'm right there with you. Tiana, you said maybe we can come up with better background checks and have a national registration or national registry for gun owners. Absolutely. Maybe we can do that. But here's the thing, and we're going to take a quick pause in a moment. I want us to key in on the fact, folks, that as President Biden said, and I think I've shared that statistics with you as well, guns are the #1 killer of children in this country. The #1 killer. So can you imagine that? He said more than cancer, more than any disease, more than car accidents. It is guns, folks. And look at the conversation. Look at the national discussion about gun violence prevention. Look at the national discussion about gun safety and gun laws and gun reform. Look at the national conversation about, the mass shootings that we've had. We have had over 200 mass shootings in this country already. So if you think about the current climate for the talk about guns, where does all of this information go? Where do people go, families whose families, victims and the victims' families whose lives have been wrecked as a result of gun violence? Where do they go to find some refuge? Where do they go to be a part of the conversation to change the dynamic? Now, as you know, I'm always a huge proponent of people power, right? That's not the same as government power. People power is what we do on the ground, the grassroots stuff, right? The direct action stuff. Government power is the institutional systematic stuff. So, but you do need government power in certain cases. And some people say in all cases, and some people say, no, we can just keep it at. For a situation like this, you need people power and you need government power, right? Because people power go directly to the neighborhoods, go directly to the families, right? But government power can be on the forefront. It can be a place where we can have these conversations among the legislators. It could be an institution that can get money for all of the additional resources. It can create toolkits. It can create a lot of different things that can be trickled down to the people, that can be trickled down to organizations. This is what we're talking about for creating a safer place to live, a safer country to be in. So again, I think this is a phenomenal idea. It's an idea whose time has come. And I'm happy that President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris had the foresight and the vision and finally say, okay, we're going to make this happen. And it's not just about Black people. It's not just about white people. Every one of us is affected by gun violence. Let me see something here. Diva Barrel, you checked in. Thank you so much. You said people claim to be quote unquote pro-life should fully embrace and applaud this announcement. Ain't that something? Come on, Diva Barrel. I like that. That's a great way of looking at it. That's an excellent way of looking at it. If you're pro-life, you should be for gun violence prevention. There it is right there. I love that. Thank you, Diva Barrel. I think it's Case V. You said 18 and 19-year-old gangbangers should not count as children either, just to sway the narrative. Well, you know what? How did they get into that position? How did they get into that role? And I understand. And that's a different part of the conversation, KCV, where, you know, if you have young people who are killing other young people who are killing adults, whew, that's a different part of the conversation. But maybe this office, and I'm not putting too much on what this situation is supposed to do, but maybe this office can at least help to put us in a better place with this conversation. Let me just share this very quickly, and then we're going to take our next pause. One of the things that it was announced yesterday, you didn't hear from the president today, but one of the things that was announced was that this office will play a key role in implementing the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. And let's go to the next one on that one, please, Lise. I'm going to share this. There we go. Thank you. This office will play a key role in implementing the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which is a 2022 law that's considered the most sweeping gun violence prevention measure in 30 years. Congress passed the legislation after a gunman massacred 19 students and 2 teachers at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. So when you go back to look at that act, folks, and you see some of the details of that act, you'll understand that this is going to play a significant role. The thing is, as we take this pause, the thing is making sure that people power kicks in and that we use this office as an accountability measure and to keep people on track when we're talking about gun violence prevention in this country. That's the big thing. Use this as an accountability measure and to keep people on track for gun violence prevention. Pauline checked in. You said, yes, something has to be done. Gun violence is out of control in Black communities, white communities, Latino communities. It's everywhere. Absolutely. You don't like my music. You said, once you are out of the womb, you are on your own. We will. That's sad. That's sad. And we don't want it to be that case. There needs to be a community. There are already community of families of victims and community of victims from gun violence. Now it's time to open up the community. So for those of us who may not have been affected by gun violence, if you have not been affected, your family hasn't been affected, then it is an opportunity for you to show your allyship. It's an opportunity for you to show your humanity and connect with your neighbors and other folks who have been affected. And we can create a different culture in this country when it comes to guns. So big shout out to the president, to the vice president. We're looking forward to seeing how this process goes. Folks, if you want to see the full announcement, all of what the president had to say, we even had Vice President Kamala Harris gave some remarks. Make sure you go to blackstarnetwork.com. We have been streaming this announcement ever since it started this morning. It was live a few minutes ago, but we wanted to make sure we put something out there for the show. But you can hear the full remarks from President Biden, Vice President Harris, and others, and victims families as this announcement has been made. But go to blackstarnetwork.com to see the full press conference. All right, folks, stay tuned. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about rail safety, how it is National Rail Safety Week. We're going to share with you some statistics and most importantly, have some conversations about how we can keep our children safe near the railroad tracks. Stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
On his first day in office, with the country in crisis, President Biden got to work for us. cutting Black child poverty in half, more money for Black entrepreneurs, millions of new, good-paying jobs. He's lowered the cost of living and prescription drugs. But there's more to do. He gets it because we all deserve dignity, safety, respect, and a chance to do more than just get by, but to get ahead.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay Black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We just had a little update, a big update really, about what President Biden and Vice President Harris have embarked upon on keeping children safe in this country with the creation of a federal gun violence prevention office in the government. So that is major, but we're going to continue to stay on the theme of keeping children safe. And that's the thing that that's the mission that my next guest is all about, with she's doing the work of Safe Kids Worldwide. It is National Rail Safety Week, folks. And if you're not familiar, this is the part of the time of the year where conversations about railroad safety, about train safety, all of these things, especially when it comes to our children, has to be had, and an awareness need to be made to make sure that for those of us who live near railroads, those of us who live near trains, and where these major intersections, and it might not just be in rural areas, even if you're in urban areas and you have metros and other rail systems, that you understand the dynamics of it. Because trust and believe, folks, more children are actually affected by rail systems more than we like to believe or even know. So I'm going to bring up my next guest, who is going to give us some insight into this phenomenon and what we can do to make sure we keep ourselves and our children safe as we celebrate National Rail Safety Week. My next guest, she's a program director for Safe Kids Worldwide, and we'd like to welcome her to the culture here on the Black Star Network, our sister Shoshana McNaught. Am I saying that correctly? I want to make sure. Am I saying that correctly?
You did get it right. Good job.
Okay,
You got it right.
All right, awesome. Because I know how people do my name. They be like, for first, he, Mohammed.
No, you did it the first time. So thank you. I appreciate that. I know what you mean. So thank you.
Thank you. Sister Shoshana, let's talk about this as we talk about National Rail Safety Week. Why is this important? I mean, you're a Black woman, but we do not have a conversation about Rail Safety Week. It is not, and you know what? And the reason that we wanted to have a conversation is because it is a part of the culture. Right. It should be at the forefront of the culture. But why should we talk about it, especially for Black Americans?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, and I really appreciate you having me on, and I applaud you for raising and talking about this issue and highlighting it this week. As you mentioned, it's National Rail Safety Week, so we're working with our partners at Union Pacific to share information and raise awareness about this issue this week. And as you mentioned, most people, even people who live around train tracks, don't realize how big of an issue it is. It's sort of like blurred into the background. But it's an issue because it impacts families, it impacts communities. I'll get to the statistics in a second, but I just want people to think about, when a child dies, it's not just the parents or the caregivers that are impacted. It's the extended family, it's the community, it's the church family. And also on the flip side, if a child is hit by a train and an engineer, was conducting that train, that engineer is impacted as well. His or her family is impacted, their community is impacted. So it's something that impacts families and communities. So it's important for us to talk about this issue. And most people don't even know that every 2 days, a child between the age of 0 to 19 is hit by a train or is in a train collision. So it's happening, and it's happening in our communities.
Absolutely. And that is astonishing, astonishing statistic to know that it's happening that often. You're working for Safe Kids Worldwide, so y'all are making sure that children stay safe on a number of different spaces. But you did put out a report to talk a little bit about this, and I want to just glean something from that report, some statistics, some data that was mentioned. Lisa, let's put this one up here, please. It said that between 2009 and 2019 alone, 826 children died as a result of a rail-related injury, and more than 2,000 children were injured. Trespass incidents make up 65% of these fatalities and 47% of the non-fatal injuries, with teens ages 15 through 19 being the age group most frequently impacted. Okay, Shoshana, let's break this thing down for a little bit. How is this happening? What is not being said to the children and to young people, teenagers, about this? Is this a situation where children are just playing on the railway and they're just not getting out on time from when they hear a train? What's really going on? Talk to me about this.
No, yeah, this is something that, as we look at this age group, you mentioned people not hearing the train. That's one of the things that we like to share with people. Trains are not as loud as people think. Some people think about trains and they think about, the old movies when you hear the trains clickety clacking down the track. Like, modern trains aren't as loud as people think. So people think, oh, I can walk around the railway tracks and I'll hear when the train is coming. But that's not always the case. And especially in today's age where we're wearing our headphones or we're on our phone or we're texting, we may be distracted and not paying attention. So, you don't, even if you were listening, you're not really listening. But trains are quieter than people think. And also, trespassing is an issue, and people don't realize that they're on private property, and it's not only dangerous, but it's illegal to trespass as well. So we encourage people. One of our biggest tips is to not play around the tracks. A lot of young people think it's cool. People go to take their graduation pictures, prom pictures. They think they want to hang out
on a railroad track.
They think hanging out by the tracks is cool. And you've not seen there are
I
people
haven't
who,
seen I know that people, look. I know that people hang out on railroad tracks. You know what I'm saying? Like we in the movie Stand By Me, they had the boys playing on the railroad track. But I know that. But I'm just talking about prom pictures.
people take their graduation because they have this, like the trains are, for some people, collectors, they love trains. I mean, trains are cool, but there's this imagery of, the artistic photo by the track, how it's laid out.
Okay.
You see where I'm going.
Yeah,
but that
okay.
is not a good idea. It's not a good idea. Another thing, one of the statistics we like to share as well is that trains are a lot bigger than people think. So it's not just on the track. The trains are wider than the track, at least 3 feet on each side. So even if you get across the track, you can still get hit by the train. So trains are quieter. I want listeners to remember this. Trains are quieter than they think. Trains are larger than they think. And just don't be by the track. But the trespassing is a huge issue. It's the hanging out. People also think, they may have a route that they need to go, and it's easier to cut across the track. And so they think it's a shortcut, but also bad idea. So we tell people, even if you think it's a shortcut, it's not worth it. Track tragedies are preventable. And so we want people are preventable. So, it's not a good idea to take the shortcut. You think you might be saving a few minutes, but it may not be worth it. It's never.
I like that. I like how y'all how you put that, track tragedies, and I think that's going to be the hashtag. Should be the hashtag track tragedies, because it sticks. One of our great crew members, Lana, checked in, and she said she worked for Union Pacific, but she also said rail lines only run through the hood and rural communities where we are. Don't go, quote unquote, across the tracks. I've been hearing. I mean, we all, I think, have been heard that terminology on the other side of the tracks, right? Mm-hmm. But she's saying that rail lines go through the hood and through the rural communities where we are. Is that the case? Is that still the case here in modern day America?
I can't speak to exactly where the rail tracks are, but I do know I've heard, and there's that sense of don't go across the tracks because what's on the other side of the tracks. I can't speak to exactly where the tracks are, but I am familiar with that saying and do know that historically that has been the case.
Now, and that might be, again, that's also part of the culture when you are growing up around the tracks, and you might be thinking that all rail tracks are safe because that is part of the culture in which you grew up in. Janelle, my sister, she checked in. She said, I know that here in Eastern North Carolina, they have the train so long that when they stop on the tracks, they make everyone late, especially the kids trying to cross to get to school. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that is an issue. And we know one of the statistics that we had in our report as well, we talk about more kids are hurt in the hours immediately after school. So dismissal time or after school activities. And again, this goes back to that concept of, yes, there's the backup. And so people may be trying to cut through the train or go under the train. And it's not because you don't know when the train is going to move. It's never safe to try to beat the, so from a driver perspective, people may try to beat the train because they're thinking, this train is going to be here for a while. And so if I get held up, I'm going to be late. So let me try to beat the train. That's also a bad idea. And then you have sometimes kids, teenagers, even adults trying to cut through because there is that backup. So that is an issue. And I know our partners at Union Pacific, that is something that they are working to reduce and eliminate because, that we know that is a concern.
That is a huge concern. Let me just share and I want to get your take on this as well, Shoshana. Tiana checked in. She said, Texas, California, Illinois have the highest fatalities and collisions. Are those the big states that do have those, or are there some other states that have higher fatalities and collisions?
I would have to look at the numbers, but I do know that those three are big states. They have a lot of tracks in those states. I can't give you the ranking. I don't have them in order. I do have the numbers by state, but I don't have them in order. But those are, I agree with Tiana that those are big major states that have lots of tracks.
And what about fencing? Because one of our crew members talks about that there aren't any fencing around certain tracks. Is that something that Safe Kids Worldwide is advocating for? Because I want to talk a little bit about some of the solutions. We're talking about human behavior, using common sense, looking both ways, don't try to, beat the train and all of those things. But then there's some systemic things I think can happen, which is like fencing, signage. Talk to us about the effort that Safe Kids Worldwide is having on that front.
Sure. So from a Safe Kids perspective, we are more on the education side of things. So education and raising awareness. Okay. So we have, we've worked with Union Pacific to create a Clifford and the Railroad Crossing book. That's a book that's available. It's a free resource. You can go to our Rail Safety Hub to get this book. I think most people are aware of Clifford, the big red dog, and it takes Clifford through a store with Emily Elizabeth. And it's a great way. If you go to our website, you can order the book. We'll ship it to you for free. And it's a resource that you can read to either your child, a child in your community, your niece, nephew, at your church group or wherever, and share that safety messaging. And our goal with this is, we want to have something fun to inform the kids, but also as the parent or caregiver reading the story, we're hoping the messages get across to the adults as well. In terms of, Gates and, Safe Kids, we do some advocacy work because, as we do our work in keeping kids safe, we do recognize that there are some systemic issues involved. And at Safe Kids, I'm happy to say that we just launched our new strategic plan, and the theme for our strategic plan is equity in child safety. And we want to make sure that kids are safe no matter where they are, no matter where they live, no matter who their parents are, but all children deserve and have the right to have access to a car seat, a smoke alarm in their house, a carbon monoxide detector, all of those things. So we recognize that there are systemic issues, and which is why we have, made it an intentional effort to say that we are going to be focusing on equity in child safety over the next few years and into the future, because that is the systematic issues are, it's not something that can be broken down overnight, but we do need partners. It's not a one organization show, but we need partners from all levels of society to work towards making sure that there is equity in child safety.
We got about 30 seconds, Shoshana, but I'm wondering, are Black children make up the highest demographics of children that are affected by train accidents, track tragedies?
That is a great question. And I was trying to find that out before I came on. And unfortunately, the data that we look at from the Federal Railroad Administration, the data set actually does not include a variable for race and ethnicity. So I wasn't able to pull that information for you. So I'm not able to be specific on that. And
Well, you know what? I appreciate you for saying that and not just throwing out a bunch of BS. Throwing out some stuff and we be like, oh, okay. I mean, I'm glad that you like, hey, we don't know yet. But, it might be interesting just for us, and it might be an advocacy point down the road where you ask the question like, can we get some more detailed information about the deaths? Are we talking about Black children, white children, Latinos? Like, who are we talking about here? Because I think that also will speak to the strategies that to use of awareness and prevention. So I think that's a great point. But I appreciate you for being honest about that. We're going to have to take a quick pause, but I do want to put out your website for Safe Kids Worldwide, because y'all are working on a number of fronts, not just dealing with rail safety and track tragedy. What's the website, Shoshana?
Yes, our website is safekids.org. So that's SAFEKIDS.org. And as you mentioned, we work on a host of issues. So this week is Rail Safety Week. This week is also Child Passenger Safety Week. So we encourage everyone to buckle up every time, every ride. And if you have a young one, make sure they're in the correct car seat for their age, weight, and height. We work on drowning prevention, safe sleep, pedestrian safety, bicycle safety, making sure our kids are wearing helmets. In our community, we want to make sure we see our kids in helmets. So we work on a host of issues. So please go to our website, blackchildpolicy.org.
And let me just tell you, Shoshana, I'm in Los Angeles. I've seen people drive with children in the front seat, no seatbelt, piled up in the back. Oh, it's crazy. And you know what I mean? You want to say something, you want to be like, man, put your child in the damn seat, man. Like, you know, you really, because you like, anything can happen. And sometimes in some of these places, I don't know how about any other place, but in LA, people can't drive like that. Woo!
Can I just throw one thing in there? I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things, this goes for rail safety and child passenger safety, modeling your behavior. As adults, we have to model the behavior. We have to wear our seatbelts. If we want our kids, I have a toddler, you know, I need to wear my seatbelt. So he sees me. Oh, he's in the back seat. He's seeing everything I do. So he sees me wearing my seatbelt, and that becomes normal and a part of his, you know, thinking. Same thing for rail safety. Model the behavior. Talk to your kids about rail safety, and you know, it's a combination. So you got to practice what you preach.
There it is. Sister Shoshana, I truly appreciate your time with us today, giving us some insight and some recommendations on how we can celebrate National Rail Safety Week. A lot of my Culture Crew members who are checking in, who are saying that this has been an issue for years, and so they're happy to at least see that it has been brought to the forefront the way we have just had it today. So I appreciate you, sister. Thank you so much for keeping our children safe, and more importantly, thank you for being so good for the culture, Shoshana. Thank you.
No, thank you, and I appreciate you having me. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you. Thank you to your listeners as well.
Thank you. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, it is National Hispanic Heritage Month, and we want to talk about how we could celebrate Afro Latinos, and I'm going to have that conversation up next. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
On his first day in office, with the country in crisis, President Biden got to work for us. Cutting Black child poverty in half, more money for Black entrepreneurs, millions of new, good-paying jobs. He's lowered the cost of living and prescription drugs. But there's more to do. He gets it, because we all deserve dignity, safety, respect, and a chance to do more than just get by, but to get ahead.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you missed the first half of the show, folks, make sure you take a look at it. Go back to our website at blackstarnetwork.com. Be a part of Team Replay. In the first half of the show, we talked a little bit about President Biden and Vice President Harris announcing the creation of a federal office for gun violence prevention. You'll be hearing much more of that. We have streamed the announcement, the major press conference from the White House on blackstarnetwork.com. So you can see the full press conference from there. Also, we just talked to Sister Shoshana from Safe Kids Network, Safe Kids Worldwide, about National Rail Safety Week, a major week of making sure that our children stay safe around railroads and not become a track tragedy. So make sure y'all do your due diligence and take a look at the first half of the show. All right, now let's switch gears. Let's talk about another part of the culture, which is our Hispanic brothers and sisters, as this is Hispanic Heritage Month, folks. And this is the time of year. It kicks off from September the 15th and ends on October the 15th. But this is the time of year we start to look at the great contributions to the culture and other parts of our life and our experience here in America that Hispanic people have brought to the table. But this year, there's a greater emphasis on celebrating Afro Latinos. That's right, folks. And I know that for some of us, some of you even question, like, Farajii, why do you even talk about Hispanic stuff sometimes? Like, why do you even, this is supposed to be, and it's like, y'all know there's a huge part of the population within Black America that are actually Afro-Latino. Let me share with you a little bit of some details, and then I'll bring my sister Noemi on, as well as my sister Corinna. But take a look at this. This is a 2020 from the Pew Research Center. They reveal that there are 6 million Afro-Latino U.S. adults that make up 12% of the adult Latino population and 2% of all adults in the country. Approximately 800,000 adult Afro-Latinos do not identify as Hispanic, highlighting the complex dimensions of Hispanic identity in the United States. Now, notably, 130 million individuals in Latin America are of African descent, demonstrating the significant impact of Afro-Latino culture on the region. About 15 times more enslaved Africans were transported to Portuguese and Spanish colonies in the Americas than to the United States. This comes out of the Hilltop, which is the official newspaper of Howard University, because they just had their celebration for Afro-Latinos just a couple of days ago at the start of Hispanic Heritage Month. So why not celebrate that part of the culture? Why not celebrate those folks who are a part of us? Don't understand it. First, let me welcome our culture crew member for the day, Corinna Denise, checking in as always. She's a college advisor and activist, and one of our great culture crew members. Corinna, good to connect with you once again. How you feeling this afternoon?
Hey, peace. Happy Friday. Hey,
Happy Friday. So really quickly, before we bring Sister Noemi on very quickly around this, Hispanic Heritage Month celebrating Afro-Latinos. You're down in Florida. You also, spend some time in New York. How big of this is this? How major is this celebration? And why should this be significant for Black folks who are not a part of the Afro-Latino community? Why should they celebrate? Why should we celebrate?
Yeah, well, it's a part of who we are as a people, right? Black people are so multifaceted, right? We always say that we're not monolithic, but yes, we have a huge demographic within the Latino Hispanic community. My mother is from a Central American country, Belize. Which has always been a very diverse country. I mean, you have Panama, you have Dominican Republic. If you travel to these places, you will see a lot of people who look just like me and you, Farajii. But, I think we might not see it as much sometimes, depending on where we are in parts of the United States or the cities. A lot of folks tend to think when you think Latina, you might see someone who looks like J-Lo, for example. But when you go abroad, that is all you see. And to your point, talking about the Portuguese and the Spanish, they were the biggest, right, in the transatlantic slave trade. So if you were to travel to like Brazil, to Portugal, you would see so many Black people, right? And, you know, arguably people have even mentioned, you know, can we even really consider Hispanic to be a race or Latino to be a race, right? Because it's very, very dominant. You know, one of the schools I worked in as a college counselor, you know, we pretty much straight up had all Black kids. Even the Latino kids, majority of them, except for maybe a handful, were Black Latino kids. So it's more common than you think, especially if you go up in New York City, go uptown, go to Washington Heights and stuff, you're going to see all the Black Latinos, Black Puerto Ricans. They are everywhere. For me, myself, again, since my mom's from Belize, that's something I always tussle with. I'm like, you know, I guess depending on how you would define it, I could classify myself as a Latina, although we've always been Black and we got so many mixtures in my family alone. But yes, Black Latinos are here. They are everywhere. Mexico, you name it. So it's not uncommon. And I hope that with Hispanic Heritage Month, which has been around for a while, and with this particular awareness about celebrating specifically Afro Latinos, it will bring more awareness, right? And we won't look at this as something that is uncommon, because it's very common. And, you know, I think we need to normalize that. You know, there are Black Latino folks, people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to bring in my sister Noemi Perez, who serves as a political strategist and president of Eco Diversity. And we're going to take a quick remark from her, and then we got to take another pause. But Sister Noemi, thank you again for joining us in this conversation with me and Corinna. How you feeling this afternoon?
I'm well, and you know, I'm going to ditto what Corinna just said. You're doing it because it has to be done. There's a void in it, right? Even in Washington, D.C. for congressional activities, we see CBC activities, congressional Hispanic activities, but where does the Afro-Latino or Afro-Latine fit into the puzzle? It's sort of pick and choose depending on who you are and where you feel more comfortable. So if you have to be that mold breaker, be that, do that, and set the tone. Absolutely. And thank you for doing this.
No, you know, and it just doesn't make sense. And to Corinna's point, it's like you got all of this. You got all these two communities, Latino community, the Black community, like we live hand in hand with one another, even here in LA. You know, I mean, it's like we grew up under the same conditions. We have been unfortunately oppressed by the same systems. But then there's still this big differentiation. And so when it comes down to the celebrating, some people really push back on this, Noemi. And I don't understand. I'm thinking to myself, like, bruh, if you knew Black history, you would understand that this is a part of our history. We're all a part of the same history.
And let me just say, the 5 countries that kicked off Latino or Hispanic Heritage Month, right, are all Central American. Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador have actual huge Afro-Latino populations. Honduras basically is home to the Garifuna. They are largely concentrated either in Los Angeles or New York. Okay, businesses very heavily populated, Spanish speaking. There is a Garifuna museum in Los Angeles. Look into them, learn, right? If anything, it's an opportunity. This month is an opportunity to be Black, right? And look into and support Black-owned Latino businesses that in this case are Afro-Latinos, or to learn a little bit more. And, you know, Corina, thank you for bringing up the Belizean side and the Panamanian side of the equation, right? Because those two countries have both an English colonized component and a Spanish colonized component. And depending on which side of the bar you're on, depends on where you lean in on identifying. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. We got to take a quick pause, but I want to get to a comment, Corinna and Sister Noemi, that my sister Pretty Brown Mimi brought up. She said, Pretty Brown Mimi 726, you made a powerful statement. You said a lot of Hispanic people don't acknowledge their African heritage. I want us to talk about that to see why that is the case. And more importantly, how do we break down that wall to make sure that that heritage is a part of the larger conversation. Folks, we're just getting started as we're talking about celebrating Afro-Latinos for Hispanic Heritage Month. Join us in the conversation. We're streaming live on YouTube. You can go on Roland Martin's YouTube page, jump into the chat, and be a part of the culture crew for the day. Folks, stay with us. We still got a lot to talk about here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
On his first day in office, with the country in crisis, President Biden got to work for us. Cutting Black child poverty in half, more money for Black entrepreneurs, millions of new, good-paying jobs. He's lowered the cost of living and prescription drugs. But there's more to do. He gets it because we all deserve dignity, safety, respect, and a chance to do more than just get by, but to get ahead.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay Black. I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We are talking about celebrating Afro Latinos for Hispanic Heritage Month. And folks, if you did not know, there is a large population of Afro Latinos in this country and around the world. And we want to make sure that as we talk about Hispanic Heritage Month, that kicked off on September the 15th. It goes all the way through until October the 15th. This is a month where we start to have different conversations about our people being a part of that community. And so today we once again want to kind of push the envelope a little bit and just to have different discussions about this, because for some of us, we may not even know that we might have Latino or Hispanic roots in our family. For others, we might be still struggling to figure out, well, which side of myself do I bring to the forefront? Is it my Blackness or is it my Latino side? We don't know. So I'm then talking to my sisters. First, we got Corinna Denise, who is her family and her people. She's from Belize. So she's dealing with, she says she struggles with it, but culture crew member Corinna Denise, who is a college advisor and activist. And then I also got my sister Noemi Perez, who is a political strategist who's been working on this front with the Obama administration and other spaces. And she also serves as the president of Eco Diversity. So I want to get back to what Pretty Brown Mimi said on this, Sister Noemi, and then Corinna, I would love to get your take on this, where she made this point and this is Culture Crew member Pretty Brown Mimi talking about how some folks don't really acknowledge their Black side, their Blackness, right? And I hate identity politics, Corinna. You know, we talk about it a lot. I hate identity politics because I think it puts people in a box rather than giving people the opportunity to fully express themselves. But for the purpose of this conversation, why is that existing? Why do we have that dynamic, Sister Noemi, where you might have a Black person whose family is from Portugal, Belize, some other South American country, but then they keep that under wraps? And according to the data, this is not uncommon. A lot of Afro Latinos do not always come out to say, "Hey, I'm Afro Latino." What is that the root of that?
The simple root of it, bottom line root, white supremacy, colonization, right? In terms of the strata that was created by the Spanish to manage the populations in the countries that they were colonizing. There was a strata that actually identified layer by layer where you as an individual fit depending on the degree of mixture you had, right? So the purest in bloodline you had to being just purely Spanish, the higher up you went, the more mixed or the darker skinned you were, the lower and less privileged you were. And so naturally, and we have to acknowledge this as well, right? As people try to scale up or be freer in the ability to succeed in life, they want to basically try to hide as much of their history as possible while they become lighter skinned, right? So
is that the case for Hispanic? Because that was the thing Pretty Brown Mimi says. She said a lot of Hispanic people don't acknowledge their African heritage. So if you are a lighter skinned Hispanic person, but you got some African blood running through them veins, you're not pumping the Black Power fist.
No. Those that
so on the Hispanic side, because there's some beef there, and I'm trying to make no generalization because I'm coming to this conversation with full humility. But I have seen some Hispanic folk from Corinna's point, from New York, they say, "Oh no, I'm Black, I'm an Afro Latino, you know what I mean? I'm with Black folks." But then if you have some Hispanic folks that are like, "Nah, bro, we not." So white supremacy is at the root of all of this.
Absolutely. Yes, I think too, a lot of it has to do with just shame of the history, right? Like we've been so curated. A lot of our history that's thrown in our face has just been the disruption of enslavement. And we haven't even been exposed, really, enough of us haven't been exposed to who we were before that disruption. So, that stigma. And I think that also has a lot to do with a lot of the colorism that you see abroad in these different countries, right? Talking about that color range, from the lightest to the darkest, is kind of like a pyramid scheme almost of like what level of privilege you have access to depending on how much melanin you have in your skin, which is unfortunate. And I think those stigmas are perhaps maybe one of several reasons why people have that shame to not acknowledge that part, because immediately when you think about it, they're associating the bad part, right? Like the enslavement and the colorism and the struggle of it. We've had more exposure to the bad than the beauty, than the good. I think that's perhaps maybe why some folks are reserved. I think a lot of it too is just simply ignorance, right, to our history. We don't know our whole history as a people, and hopefully now we're going to learn more about it and understand that the blood of Africa, it runs almost everywhere, right? It's there. And a major part of it, unfortunately, is because of that disruption of enslavement. It didn't start in the Americas, and we were kind of like dispersed everywhere. Before we were Belizean, from Guatemala, Nicaraguan, wherever, we were African, okay? And, that's kind of what happened. And so I think that has a lot to do with the shame. But, I really hope that we get to a point where we're learning more of our cultures and our roots so that we can, revel in it because there's so much to be proud of. I think a lot more to be proud of than ashamed. Definitely. Yeah.
So it makes me think of Cardi B. It makes me think of Cardi B, right? And one of the, and I think another part of this conversation is that Sister Noemi and Corinna, do we need to have individuals like a Cardi B to constantly like advocate for a different identity? You know what I'm saying? Cardi B is unashamed, unapologetic about being both Black and Latino, right? But she's, and I'm saying in hip hop, she's probably in an anomaly, right? I think in hip hop, it kind of forces you to kind of pick sides a little bit. But she was accepted by Black folks, right, as being who she is. But when you think about the large swath of the entertainment culture, there aren't a lot of Cardi B's. Vocal women who represent both sides, you know what I mean?
It matters, right? Because for so long, the celebrities we do see that are Latinos from, for example, countries in the Caribbean with Afro Latinos are people like J-Lo. Love J-Lo, right? But what about the Afro Latinos, the individuals that have visible
Is she considered Afro Latino though? But is she considered Afro Latino?
No, and I don't think she identifies as one.
No, I'm serious. I'm being honest because I've never heard her say it. Like we knew who like the guy she was dating. You know what I'm saying? She has a privilege. Let me just say that, and I think that's one of the things that Mimi is talking about, having this privilege. Mimi, you said something. You said what gets me is that you talked about the fact that some Latinos or Hispanics. They are Black adjacent. This is what Mimi said. They're Black adjacent. They can kind of tap into it when it's necessary and then tap out of it when it's not necessary.
I think we have different definitions of Afro-Latino, right? And it just depends, I think, on the construct at the time, the context. So I think it can differ, how we view that. But I think it's beautiful, that Cardi B acknowledges all of her roots, right? That's a beautiful thing, and I'm glad to hear that that she stands on it. But yeah, I mean, I honestly really don't want to go there, with how do we define her as this? Because she has acknowledged it. So I mean, for context and purposes here for like today's show, if we're defining an Afro-Latino or Latina as someone who has is of African descent, then yes, I would think that she would be considered Afro-Latino. I think it just depends on how we define it. But, I don't know if we should put so much emphasis on that rather than just, acknowledging, yes, we all have, that African ancestry and African blood.
Right. We coming from somebody.
Yeah.
Can I share this as well?
Please. Yes, ma'am. We're going to take a quick prayer pause after you.
One of the crew members, your crew member said, Amara La Negra is a great example. Yes. But the point that I wanted to make is that we oftentimes think that Spain itself has been historically just purely Castellano, i.e. European white. It has not. If you go to places in Spain, there is a very strong history of Muslim heritage and culture. It is visible. You see it. We're talking about Morocco. We're talking about North Africa. We're talking about a country that was dominated, right, by Muslim culture for about 500 years. So why aren't we taught that, right? There is a historic effort to try to associate ourselves and our lineage with the aristocracy. I'm not mispronouncing it, i.e. what is considered pure bloods in Spain. And it has been taught to us in Spanish colonized countries. And so it's deeply rooted. But again, it's on the definition of what success and purity looks like in terms of hair, in terms of skin color, in terms of body image, right? And how it is associated to access to privilege and success.
Absolutely. We got to take it, and I love that. We're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's continue the conversation, because there's also another part about this in terms of how do both communities, how do you have Afro Latinos and how do you have Black and Brown communities start to tap into political power, which is the next step. I know, Sister Noemi, you understand the power of that. Corinna, you understand the power of that. Imagine, folks, if black and brown were on the same page about politics in this country, woo, same page. Can you imagine that? Look, we'll continue with the conversation on the other side, talking a little bit about this and so much more. Stay tuned. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
President Biden has delivered for Black America. More funding for Black entrepreneurs. Millions of new good-paying jobs. He's lowering the cost of medications and the cost of living. Joe Biden is delivering for us, and that's the facts.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We've been talking about celebrating Afro Latinos during this year's Hispanic Heritage Month. And I've been checking in with two dynamic sisters to give their insight, of course, along with you folks. But let's go to the sisters, Corinna and Denise, who is a college advisor, and my sister Noemi Perez, who is a political strategist and president of Eco Diversity. So this is such a big conversation, Sister Noemi and Sister Corinna, that I know that there's a lot of ground to cover, but I always want to kind of keep having certain discussions because I think it's important. I learned something from this as well. So I'm a little selfish in having this conversation. I'm like, yeah, I want to know more about this. So y'all gonna just have to if you don't want to hear it, turn it off. But I want to learn. What I did not know as we talk about this, and I wanted to have this part of the conversation about politics, but what I did not know is that there is a Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, the CHCI.
Yes.
They hosted their 46th annual awards gala and 2023 leadership conference that just ended yesterday. They were hosting it all this week. So we've often been talking about the CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus, having their conference as it is right now. But we didn't mention the fact that you got this Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. Sister Noemi, talk to us a little bit about the work of this institute and why it's important for us to even have the conversation. Say, hey, CHCI and the CBC are meeting at the same, roughly during the same week.
Absolutely. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the Congressional Black Caucus have their legislative weeks during the same time. So people like me that get to dib and dab, we go to visit the CBC when we want to, CHC when we want to, right? But nowhere is there an in-between. So keep being a disruptor. But part of that history, right, is that disconnectivity. Historically, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus was comprised largely of Mexican Americans. That is part of the history of the United States. Over time, though, we have seen more Afro Latinos elected into congressional offices, right? From Florida, from Brooklyn. One of your listeners keeps mentioning Brooklyn. Absolutely. They're there. Are they members and overlapping into the Congressional Black Caucus? I don't know yet. Right? It's part of that connection piece that is the disruption that you're helping with. So keep doing what you're doing.
So why? And I mean, I think that's crazy. I think that's crazy. You have the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, and you mean to tell me, Corinna, that there aren't any merging activities or events for these two? And you have millions upon millions of Afro Latinos here in the United States of America. And maybe, I don't know why, am I sounding crazy? The political power that could come from both caucuses, from both groups of congressional leaders. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm a little guy on a totem pole. And nobody has been like, hey, you know what? Let's bring these groups together because we got more things in common than we do differences.
And their power in numbers, right? And I think you raise a great question. You know, why isn't there more of a coming together? And unfortunately, I'm going to circle back. I think it has a lot to do with white supremacy. You know, these divisions that have caused us to separate from each other. You know, we can do that effortlessly, right? You know, stay divided, but it's almost like a struggle or a maximum effort for us to actually come together, right? So how do we change that? You know, how do we bring more awareness to the fact that we need to come together? I think this Hispanic Heritage Month, this platform, this conversation we're having right now to expand people's minds to see that, again, we have more in common than we are apart, that, you know, it is pretty much common. It's not uncommon that, you know, Black people who are Latino exist, right? It's a part of our culture and who we are as a people. And I think, again, it's just that social construct where, you know, of race that was pretty much forced upon us, that we've kind of segregated into these different groups, right? But yeah, I raised the same question, and I honestly don't have an answer. I'd have to go do some research to see how, and maybe they have. Is that we don't know about it? You know, maybe our sis can speak to it a little bit. You know, why these two caucuses, if they come together, if that's has been a discussion, you know, enlighten us, please, because I think
let me share. The new vice chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus is Afro Latino. He's Dominican American. He is from Brooklyn. He is one of those, you know, disruptors, like we would like to call it, right? Where he's raising the visibility of Afro Latinos within the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, including the legislative issues of Afro Latinos. And yes, to Lisa's point in the chat, Maxwell Alejandro Frost is from Florida, and he's Cuban, right? Cuban American, but very visibly and very proudly Afro Latinos. So there is a movement afoot, if you will. And I think it's those disruptors that need to move and shake around those issues. But goodness gracious, Brother Farajii Muhammad, wouldn't it be great for the culture to host a panel during this week, right? On the topic. That's how you do it. That is how you do it. That is how you do it. Continue being a disruptor. I've got you.
Yes.
All right, so here, okay, so not to go into deep. You know what? We're gonna have a separate conversation.
I hope so.
we gonna have to have a separate conversation. And this is going. And look. If y'all knew, trust me, I got a big announcement to give next week, and for the culture. And if y'all understood like where my mind is going on this,
good.
Y'all would see. I mean, and this is all due seriousness. Like, I'm a newbie in this space in terms of having these conversations. So I don't know if I'm quote unquote qualified to have these discussions. But more importantly, I'm just wanting to say, okay, I think there are some differences. I think there's some power there that we're not tapping into at this point. And I think that, we could really move the needle further along. It's just strange, though. This is how deep white supremacy runs, that you got two groups of people who have been systemically and historically oppressed by the American systems meeting during the same damn time. Mm-hmm. You got representatives who are Black folk who are part of both communities. Nobody says, "Hey, look," and maybe they have. Now, I'm not going to assume that they haven't tried in the past, but I'm saying at least have a mixer. At least,
the mixer, right?
At least have a networking reception. No, let me tell you why. Because here in Los Angeles, there's the councilman. His name just escapes me. But he was in this scandal around racism because of some leaked recordings between him and his colleagues. This man has decided that he's going to stay in his job, right? Okay, fine. You got caught up in a racism scandal. You told people you're not a racist. People called for you to resign, to step down from your position. You stay. Not only is he staying, he announced the other day that he's running for re-election.
Mm. His name is Kevin De Leon.
Kevin De Leon, thank you. Kevin De Leon. And so when we see that type of bullish, I don't even know the word to describe it, since Noemi and Corinna. But when we see this type of quote unquote representation, then it means that something else needs to be put into place, something new, something different, something fresh. And it's not just about a Black face. It's about the fact that you have political interests that align with it. And I know I saw Monkey Confessions. You say, what do we have in common? The group out of chattel slavery needs specific policy to address our economic condition. Our condition isn't just economic. Our condition is spiritual, social, educational. It's with the healthcare system. It's not just about money. And yes, we do need to have specific policy conversations about that. But wouldn't it be even greater if we started to at least bridge the gap? Come on, man. No, this ain't rocket science, man. Come on, this ain't rocket science.
Yeah, we need to bridge that gap. It's a very wide gap. And we're like waist deep in the gap. And we're just all swimming around in there, hanging out in there. And we need to come together, put on a life jacket and get up out of this water and do what we need to do. Because we've been just doing some doggy paddling around for way too long, focusing on, things that are just pure distractions. And we just enable ourselves to remain stagnant in, this thing that we're calling white supremacy. So, we need to move forward out of that. And, to Monkey Confessions' point, I just want to bring up something because it was mentioned in the chat earlier. I just want to remind folks, since we're on the subject, slavery didn't even begin in the Americas, and I think a lot of folks may not even realize that. I guess one of many reasons could be, here in the USA, the enslavement continued for another, the transatlantic slave trade for another 50 years. After it was supposed to have been discontinued, the U.S. was still sneaking in enslaved Africans and bringing them here. But it didn't just start here in the U.S. So we have blood everywhere. And when we just segregate, ourselves into these groups to not be inclusive of everyone in the diaspora, could that be a reason why, we're not moving ahead as quickly as we would like when it comes to addressing certain, economic issues, social issues, to your point, Farajii, spiritual issues? How long are we going to wait in that rather than just coming collectively together as a people of African descent.
Absolutely. Look, we got to take another quick pause. When we come back, let's get some final remarks from Sister Noemi Corinna on this subject. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
President Biden has delivered for Black America. More funding for Black entrepreneurs. Millions of new good-paying jobs. He's lowering the cost of medications and the cost of living. Joe Biden is delivering for us, and that's the facts.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Hey, Black, I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation, you and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money make this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I've just been loving this conversation with my sisters, Sister Noemi Perez, the president of Eco Diversity and the political strategist, who's going to help us to try to figure out how we're going to bridge this gap, because I see it in her eyes. She already got this in her mind. This is going to be the platform that we're going to start bridging the gap. My sister Corinna Denise on my other side. So Sister Corinna, thank you so much. Let me just throw this out there because I know we got a few moments left in the show. But this is something Tiana said. Check it in. One of our great culture crew members, Tiana. She said, "We are not going to play the slavery Olympics or who got it worse." Mm-hmm. On the slavery Olympics, because it's that's what we get into when we have these discussions about celebration, acknowledging other people who have undergone struggle. You know what I mean? I get it. Black folks have undergone the most inhumane struggle in the history of the world. We could talk about slavery. We could say, well, when Africans had slavery, it was not like the European version of slavery. When we say, well, they were sold into slavery, they didn't think that in their head that they were selling their people into a hell space. You see what I'm saying? Because that just wasn't this level of European chattel slavery that our people experienced was a whole different situation. And I understand that. I get that. I'm totally in agreement with that. But the thing now that I don't see is that now if we start to try to figure out who struggled, and as Tiana said, if you go into the slavery Olympics, we are shooting ourselves in the foot, Sister Noemi.
You know, part of, besides the acknowledgement, right, is also the acknowledgement that the history of African Americans, Black Americans, right, is something that is still being addressed through legislation, right? The Supreme Court, a recent decision on affirmative action, right, that overturned efforts by Ivy League schools that have tried to increase the number of African Americans that were historically disadvantaged into seeking opportunities in those schools. Those issues are still real. So part of the piece of being a disruptor for you, Brother Farajii Muhammad, is ensuring that there is an understanding that people's movements are not being threatened by the rise of Afro Latinos or by any efforts to do collaborative work. I will also say this, part of our history or part of our future is that we're going to see a population of Latinos increasing in the United States. I think that this Afro-Latino serving as a middle point on some of these key issues is important. So how do we shape it? How do we mold it? How do we tap into those Afro-Latinos who have raised themselves as leaders? You know, I'll go back to Congress. There are currently 3 Afro-Latinos serving in Congress. And when I say Afro-Latinos, I mean individuals who are very visibly identifiable as people from the Pan-African diaspora, okay? 2 of them are from New York, one of them from the Bronx. He's actually the first, not only, he's the first Afro-Latino / Black gay elected official elected to Congress. And the second one is Adriano Espaillat from Brooklyn. And again, the vice chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. How do we engage them in that conversation to serve, right, as a voice for Afro-Latinos and to help Afro-Latinos and Latinos understand that on the African-American side, there is still work that is being done that should not be crossed, if you will, or usurped for the work on behalf of Latino issues.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, so Sister Noemi, let's talk. And we probably should have talked about this at the beginning of this conversation, but I just jumped right in because I was super excited. But what's the proper terminology? They call it Hispanic Heritage Month. Some folks in the chat says Latino. You've said Hispanic and or Latino. What's the proper way? What's the best way? And even some terms using Latinx, and I did a little research on Latinx as a research
I'd like some clarification on that too, Farajii. So
no. And check this out. Hey, Corinna, I did some research, and they found this was like Pew Research, and they found that like only a very small percent, like 3 to 5% or something very small, actually identified themselves as Latinx. And I was like, there they go again, that white man imposed label. Another group of people, another social construct that was imposed on a group of people that don't even identify themselves. Like some people check me and they're like, you should not say Latino, it's Latinx. And I'm like, but do Latinos call themselves Latinx?
So Latinx.
So what's help us understand?
So Latinx is actually an attempt by LGBTQ identified or non-binary identified individuals to remove the gender component of the word Latino or Latina. And that is how they choose to identify themselves. So somewhat of a genderless hyphenation of the word. You know, Dolores Huerta, who's a storied leader in the Latino and farm worker movement, recently was quoted as saying she doesn't like the word Latinx because, quite frankly, it eliminates her indigenous identity, right? And speaking of that cultural identity, Afro-Latinos are more commonly referring to themselves now as Latine. So if you look at the islands, particularly in the East Coast part of the United States, we're seeing the word Latine or Afro Latine, or Latin, how it might be read. So my rule of thumb, honestly, is when in Rome, right? Do as the Romans. If someone wants to be called Latinx, I respect them and refer to them as Latinx. If you are Hispano or Hispanic, like many are in Texas and in Florida, by all means, I will call you that. That is my advice, suggestion, and background on the terminology.
So just basically just ask the person, hey, how do you like to be referred to?
Karina,
Yeah.
how do you like to be referred to, right?
Right. And then they look at you like you're crazy and like, what do you mean by that? Because if somebody would ask me that, I'd be like, oh, black man, what do you want? Wait, what do you want? What do you want me to say?
It can be a touchy subject. It can
And
be a touchy subject.
I have one quick question to ask. This
Sure.
is just curious, especially being that my mother's family is from Belize. What do you think, Nomi, the term like Spanish? Because I've heard that too, where they'll be like, oh, this one, they're Spanish, you know. How do you think that interjects with like the Hispanic or Latinx or Latino, Latina?
And the Haitians are French, right? So we start looking at who's associated with France, Spain versus England. I'm going to tell you what the indigenous or Native American optic is on that. They advise people simply to not classify themselves by the flags, by European flags, right?
Yes.
And that's in effect what we're referring to when people refer to themselves as Spanish or French or from English countries. And I think once you start paying attention to that, I definitely pay attention to that. I when I speak to Panamanians or Belizeans, I have to figure out whether they're more affiliated with English history or Spanish history. There's a difference in how culture is identified and presented depending on either. So at the end of the day, bottom line, it's the affiliation, right, with colonized history.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to, we got a few moments left. Sister Noemi and Corinna, let's talk about next steps in terms of how do we celebrate? What would you, a couple of things. Let me just pull this up here. Folks, if y'all are going to be in the DC area, on September 23rd and 24th, they have Fiesta DC Festival. That's going to be happening, I guess that will be this weekend then, essentially. For Afro Latino people in the United States, Fiesta DC Festival is going to be happening this weekend. It's, of course, a festival, food, entertainment, activities from several cultures, honoring the heritage of Afro Latino people in the United States. This was put out by Howard University's Hilltop newspaper. So that is happening. But what are some of the other places or other ways that people can become more informed this month, Sister Noemi and Sister Corinna? What can folks do to kind of expand their knowledge? Because I feel like, there's some new conversations that need to be had, and it might require us to go out and actually meet people and not just be up in our head and reading stuff online.
I'll just say quickly, if you can, to travel. You'd be surprised, who you encounter and who you see. When you just travel to different countries, like I said, if you travel to like DR, right, Dominican Republic, you're gonna see all these beautiful melanated people. Same in Portugal, same in Brazil, Guatemala, Honduras. Like, if you can, definitely travel. It will give you another perception, right? Because you're gonna see these groups of people there and their element, right? As to where sometimes it looks a little bit different here in the US, depending on where you go or maybe what you're not used to. But yes, it's very common. Like someone brought up the beautiful Amara La Negra earlier, right? Like, I don't know if you guys remember that, I think initial season of Love and Hip Hop she was on, where that was kind of a battle. And there was a producer, if I'm not mistaken, who was questioning like, what, like you're Afro-Latino, like what? Like he was so unfamiliar with seeing someone from Dominican Republic with her complexion, because he just wasn't used to that. But if you travel to DR, you would see that this is a very common thing. So yeah, I would definitely say if you can travel, you're going to see that, like we've been discussing today. This is a natural thing. It's not uncommon. It's just that we've been curated to believe otherwise here in the United States for a plethora of reasons that we've just talked about on today's show.
Absolutely. Sister Naomi, what would you say? What can people do as we celebrate Hispanic, Latino Heritage Month? I don't want to get mixed up. So what can folks do?
And to piggyback on the DC festival, right? There's going to be an Afro Latino festival in Los Angeles later this month. Same thing, we're seeing a rise in Afro Latino festivals during the month of Latino/Hispanic Heritage Month to do that, to celebrate Afro Latinidad, Latine. But as I've mentioned before, if you're a foodie, find that Panamanian restaurant, find that Belizean restaurant, right? There in Los Angeles, there are a few, but there are some Afro-Mexicano restaurants. Have you ever had Afro-Mexican food?
No.
Celebrate them, right?
No.
Buy black.
Come on.
Part of what is
we're in the
during
same
February.
city. Come on, talk to me. Talk to me.
Yeah. And if there's one thing we all love, it's that rice. Okay, you're gonna go in any restaurant. I don't know what it is with Caribbean people, but they're gonna pile on that rice. I used to always ask my mom, why do they do that? And she'd be like, Corinna, because the meat is the most expensive part of the dinner. But yeah, no matter where you go, they're gonna pile on that rice. Everybody wants rice, y'all. I'm just saying, like we got that in common.
Absolutely.
Put that out there.
I appreciate that. But you said, Sister Noemi, like there are going to be these festivals, more festivals are popping up for Afro Latinos.
Absolutely.
That's
From
awesome.
Florida, New York, California, they exist. They might be much smaller than the regular Latino festivals, right? But they exist. And it's a great opportunity to go out and, like you said, just meet people, listen to music. Have you ever gone around Garifuna spaces? People from Honduras, they have a very specific music and dance type that, guess what, looks very African, undeniably African, right?
Absolutely.
And yet when you're talking to them and you're listening to them, they're speaking in Spanish. Wow. So get out your bubble, go celebrate Afro Latinos, find it, Panamanian, Belizean, Costa Rican, look for it. Afro Mexicanos, they exist, we exist, just look around.
Oh man, I love it. I love it. Hey, Sister Noemi, we're gonna have to talk offline because I need you to send me an email.
Absolutely.
With some places and definitely for some festivals. I would love to check them out.
I know we gotta go, but Sister Noemi, you mentioned the Garifuna who are like prevalent throughout Central America. So are you familiar with the punta music?
Absolutely. That's what I'm referring to, right? It's called punta music, but when you listen to it, it's heavily influenced by African drums, right? You look at the punta, the dance style. What is it?
Yes,
it's African
like
dance.
Our African roots are foundational in these places, you all. So I think that's the point that we're trying to make. When you hear that beat, even in cumbia and salsa, it is that African beat, that bass, that rhythm. It comes from the motherland. And that's what we have to do, or we have that commonality. When you look at the music, the foods, you see that common thread. It might be called something a little different, but looks similar. Those are things that we have in common that were brought from the motherland, and we were just dispersed in different parts of the world, but we carried on, our ancestors carried on those traditions. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. And Janelle, I am not salivating when she was talking about it was something around my mouth.
Plátano, find some plátano. Plátano is common throughout these different restaurants.
I love it. I'm a foodie. I'm a tourist. So what you expect? I'm a foodie.
You got a lot of Belizean restaurants in LA. They are everywhere.
Look. That's why my accent. Look, I'm gonna blow up Sister Noemi. Like, yo, I need to know some of these restaurants. Like, for real. I need some rice in my life like this.
Absolutely.
I appreciate y'all so much, sisters, for just talking a little bit about some of the cultural things, but more importantly, the importance of celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. Even if you're not a part of the Afro-Latino community, the fact is that we can still show our solidarity for our brothers and sisters. But it's hard for me to believe that there aren't more Afro-Latinos because a lot of us just don't know our family history, right? We go to places like Ancestry.com and other places. We may not know. I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm thinking there's some part of me that is somewhere from some island. I know. I look at the grain of my hair and all of this stuff. There's something happening there. So I truly appreciate you both. Sister Noemi, thank you so much, sister. And we will certainly reconnect. And I'm serious. We might just need to have a conversation about the political side of tapping into that political power, because That's something I see that happening. And I know that if that happens, the scales of white supremacy will be tipped over in our favor.
Tipped over.
Be the disruptor, brother from Muhammad. Be the disruptor.
I'm telling you, they would definitely be tipped over. Thank you, Sis Noemi, who is a political strategist, chief strategist, and president of Eco Diversity. She's doing some fantastic work in both the political and cultural spaces in LA and all across the country. So thank you again for being a part of the conversation.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, Corinna, you always bringing it. I truly, truly appreciate you, Corinna.
Thank you.
And I didn't even know that part of
Louisiana restaurants.
I mean, yes, because I didn't even know that was a part of your family history.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought you were just Black.
I mean, my dad's from New Jersey. But my mom and her entire family are from Belize. So yeah.
Wow. Wow. So do you identify as Afro Latino?
You know what? Honestly, I'm gonna be transparent. It depends. Sometimes when you're applying for stuff, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should just put it down. Might give me a little advantage. I don't know.
Wow.
But,
okay. No, I hear you. And if anybody get mad at Sister Corinna for that,
you know, I mean,
some of y'all still got your children's names on the phone bill. Stop it.
Yeah. So.
No. That's and see that again. With all due respect and with all seriousness, it's like that's the part of our history some of us may not know. And
be Black. That's what it is.
That's all it comes down to. That's all it comes to. Corinna, thank you so much. You'll always appreciate it having you on Fridays, man. You make Fridays absolutely phenomenal. So thank you so much. And big shout out to all of them. I've been watching, like, taking a look at your pictures and you putting them on social media and stuff. Corinna be in the caves and stuff, y'all. She be in the caves and on top of pyramids.
Oh, and Virgos, it's our last day of the best season of the year. So I hope all of you had the happiest of birthdays. Virgos.
Wait a minute, hold on.
You know, we gotta pass it on to the Libras come tomorrow, but you know, it's all good. Our season will be here again before you know it.
Yeah, like next year.
Yeah, but you know,
like next year,
it's the best season and the most birthdays, okay? Because everyone's parents had happy time around the holidays, and we came along.
I don't care. Look, listen, I don't care what nobody else say. There's no other sign that it goes harder than Virgos. Y'all like a gang, and you know I blame it on Beyonce. I blame Beyonce, man.
That Virgos groove.
I really blame Beyonce. Corinna, thank you so much, sister. It's always a pleasure. Absolutely. All right, have a great weekend. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank each and every one of you in the culture crew. Thank you so much for a fantastic show. I want to thank my very special guest. I want to thank Sister Noemi for checking in, Sister Shoshana from Safe Kids Worldwide. Folks, do your due diligence. Go to blackstarnetwork.com, download the app for free, and support us. We want you to support us because guess what? If you enjoy the conversation, and we're having a lot of conversations like this, folks. We're having some very, very important discussions. As much as we enjoy it and having laughs, the fact is these are all about our culture. So make sure you support us today at blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free. Follow us on social media and support us financially. You can go directly to our website. And I want to just thank all of my fantastic production team, Joel, Shannon, Keenan, my man King Keenan, Lise. Thank you so much. Maddie and Chris, thank you for a phenomenal week. Next week, got a big announcement. I got a big announcement, man. We're doing something real big here on the culture. I'm really excited, and I cannot wait to share with you what we're doing and how we're moving forward to push the culture forward in a lot of different ways. So you will see much more, but I want to give you a little something next week so that way we can get the conversation started because October, and it's planning to happen in October, God willing, and October is just around the corner. I got something for y'all. So y'all make sure y'all stay tuned. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. Up next, of course, is Roland Martin Unfiltered at 6 p.m. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will talk on Monday for another exciting edition of The Culture right here, only here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network. Have a great weekend. Talk to you soon. Peace.